1610, Chait Castle. Young servant Anna is carrying hot water to her mistress's bath, but when she opens the door, what she sees freezes her in place. The tub doesn't just contain water. There's fresh red blood, and this blood is from the peasant girl, Marta, who was killed last night. Countess Elizabeth Bathory sits naked in this bloodbath, her face glowing with joy. Though she's 50 years old, she looks 20. Her hair is golden blonde, her skin porcelain-like, not a single wrinkle. The warmth of the blood envelops her body and she takes a deep breath, as if absorbing life energy. Anna watches in terror because she knows that tomorrow it might be her turn. This woman has been killing thousands of young girls for 40 years and preserving her youth with their blood. Through her pact with the devil, she aimed to live for 4 years. And so far, no one has been able to stop her. As you watch this video, you'll learn the story of history's most horrific female serial killer. You'll discover how Elizabeth Bathory killed 60 girls, the real secret of bloodbaths, and what modern science thinks about this legend. Don't forget to hit that like button and tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. Now, let's continue with what Anna experienced that horrific night. Elizabeth Bathory was born in 1560 to one of Hungary's most powerful families. The Bathory family was a noble dynasty that had ruled in Hungary for centuries. But in this family's bloodline flowed not only nobility but also madness. Elizabeth's uncle Stefan Bathory was the king of Poland. But violence and cruelty were normal within the family. As a child, Elizabeth had witnessed how her family tortured peasants. This violence became normalized in her young mind. At age 5, Elizabeth began killing farm animals. At first out of mere curiosity, but gradually she began to take pleasure in this act. She discovered she loved seeing blood. Her family saw these behaviors as noble temperament. At age 10, Elizabeth experienced her first major trauma. She was engaged by her family to Ferenc Nadasdy for political alliance purposes. Ferenc was 5 years older than her and a very cruel warrior. He was known by the nickname Black Bay. During her childhood, Elizabeth was also introduced to witchcraft and occultism. Her nanny Ilona Jew taught her secret spells. Among these spells were ways to preserve youth. Elizabeth developed an obsession with preserving her beauty forever from a young age. At 15, she married Ferenc. The wedding was one of Hungary's greatest celebrations. But for Elizabeth, this wedding was the beginning of her nightmares. Her marriage to Ferenc Nadasdy played a very important role in shaping Elizabeth's character. Ferenc was constantly at war with the Ottomans and was a very ruthless commander. He would torture his enemies to death and hang their heads as decorations in his castles. During periods when Ferenc was not at home, Elizabeth would remain alone in the castle. This loneliness pushed her toward even darker tendencies. She began applying violence against servants. At first, just slapping, then heavier tortures. Elizabeth's torture methods gradually became sophisticated. She would make servants go out naked on snow and pour cold water on them. She would cover some with honey and watch bees sting them. During these tortures, Elizabeth would become very excited, experiencing almost sexual satisfaction. When Ferenc returned from war, he learned of his wife's behaviors. But instead of stopping her, he taught her more creative torture methods. Among the methods Ferenc taught was star kicking, placing wet paper between the victim's toes and setting it on fire. In 1604, Ferenc died of a mysterious illness. Some sources claim Elizabeth poisoned him, because she now wanted to go further than what Ferenc had taught her, but her husband was limiting her. With Ferenc's death, Elizabeth became completely free. Now there was no one to stop her. After Ferenc's death, Elizabeth's behavior became even more radical. But the real turning point was the accident that occurred in 1576. That day, when the young servant girl was combing Elizabeth's hair, she accidentally pulled her hair. When Elizabeth angrily slapped the girl, the servant's nose began to bleed. These blood drops touched Elizabeth's hand. A few minutes later, Elizabeth noticed something strange. The skin where the blood had touched looked smoother. She immediately ran to the mirror and was amazed. The wrinkles on her hand seemed to have diminished. The skin looked younger. That night, Elizabeth called her old nanny Ilona Jew. Ilona was now an old witch with secret knowledge. Elizabeth told her what she had seen. "Is this possible?" Elizabeth asked excitedly. Ilona answered thoughtfully, "Young virgin blood carries the most powerful life energy, but using this power is very dangerous. The price is heavy." "What price?" Elizabeth asked. Ilona answered with a horrific smile. "Your soul. For every innocent you kill, you lose a part of your soul, but you can stay as young as you want." Elizabeth didn't hesitate. "I accept." That night, the first magical ritual was performed. Ilona taught Elizabeth blood spells. Now a new era was beginning. The first victim was that night's servant girl. Elizabeth imprisoned her in the dungeon and slowly took blood from her veins. She took her first bath with this blood. The result was even better than Elizabeth had expected. The wrinkles on her skin had really diminished. Her hair was shinier, her eyes looked more alive. This experience enchanted her, but this beauty was short-lived. After a few weeks, signs of aging began to return. Elizabeth panicked and ran to Ilona. "Why did the effect wear off?" she asked. Ilona explained, "The blood must be fresh, and it must be used continuously. Also, young virgin blood is the most powerful. Old or non-virgin blood isn't very effective." This explanation put a horrific reality before Elizabeth. To stay young, she would have to continuously kill young girls. Elizabeth accepted this situation because preserving her beauty and youth was more important to her than anything else. The second victim was a 14-year-old farmer's daughter brought from a nearby village. This time Elizabeth acted more systematically. She first frightened the girl with torture, then cut her veins and collected her blood. This bloodbath was more effective. Elizabeth had become almost 10 years younger. Elizabeth's murders gradually became more organized. She was now doing this professionally. She found partners to help her. Her first partner was her old nanny Ilona Jew. Ilona helped Elizabeth greatly both with her witchcraft knowledge and her skills in deceiving young girls. Her second partner was a witch named Dorothea Sentes. Dorothea was expert in putting girls to sleep with magical methods and taking blood without causing pain. Her third partner was a torturer named Janos Ujvari. Janos taught Elizabeth how to use various torture instruments and showed her how to keep girls alive longer to extract more blood. Her fourth partner was Katerina Benica. Katerina was expert in deceiving young girls and bringing them to the castle. She would offer them jobs, promising better living conditions. Thanks to this team, Elizabeth's operations began to occur on a much larger scale. They were now killing 3 to 4 girls per month. The place where murders were committed was a special dungeon room on the lowest floor of the castle. This room was specially designed for torture. There were various torture instruments on the walls, a large tub in the center, and blood collection channels. Elizabeth and her team were very creative in finding victims. They used various methods to attract young girls to the castle. The most common method was posting servant job advertisements. In that period, poor families wanted their daughters to work in noble houses. Elizabeth used this situation, promising very good conditions. The second method was the promise of education. Elizabeth would say she would give young girls reading, writing, and housekeeping lessons. This was a very attractive offer because peasant girls couldn't find opportunities for education in that period. The third method was wedding organization. Elizabeth would organize large weddings and invite young girls from villages. Most of these girls would never return home. The fourth method was marriage promises. Elizabeth would act as if she had male relatives and make marriage promises with these relatives. After victims came to the castle, they were first employed normally. During this process, it was evaluated which girls were stronger, which girls had more quality blood. The youngest and most beautiful girls were reserved for special ceremonies. Others were used for daily blood needs. Elizabeth's torture methods were very sophisticated. Her aim wasn't just to kill the girls, but also to keep them in fear to increase adrenaline. Because according to Ilona, fear-filled blood had more powerful effects. The first torture method was freezing. Girls would be taken naked to the snowy courtyard and cold water would be poured on them. This torture was both painful and kept the blood cleaner. The second torture method was burning. Hot iron would be applied to parts of the girls' bodies. The screams during this torture excited Elizabeth. The third torture method was hanging. Girls would be hung from the ceiling by their ankles and left in this position for hours. During this process, blood would slowly be drained from their veins. The most horrific torture method was the Iron Maiden. This was an iron statue in human shape. It had spikes inside, and when the victim was placed inside, they would slowly be pierced. The blood collection process was done very meticulously. The victims' veins were cut with special knives. Blood was collected in sterile containers. Elizabeth's bathtub was constantly cleaned, ensuring the blood was fresh each time. Elizabeth's beauty rituals weren't limited to just blood baths. She had a very detailed routine. Every morning, she would wash her face with fresh blood. In the afternoon, she would apply blood masks. In the evening, she would take a full blood bath. The bath duration was usually 1 to 2 hours. During this process, Elizabeth would meditate and recite youth spells. She would also drink blood because she believed the blood needed to have internal effects too. Elizabeth's age phobia was at an obsessional level. Every morning she would examine herself in the mirror, panicking at the slightest sign of wrinkles. In this case, she would immediately look for a new victim. Elizabeth's beauty standards were very high. When she wasn't satisfied with her appearance, she would apply violence to her servants, as if the beauty problem was their fault. This obsession was gradually increasing. Elizabeth was now looking in the mirror several times a day, constantly searching for signs of aging. This situation drove her to commit more murders. Elizabeth also tried other beauty methods, various herbal mixtures, precious stone powders, silver water, but none was as effective as blood. The most surprising aspect of Elizabeth was that she appeared completely normal in her social life. She was a respected countess among Hungary's elite families. She regularly hosted grand banquets. These banquets included Europe's most important names. No one knew Elizabeth's true face. Elizabeth behaved very generously. She helped the poor and made donations to churches. These behaviors helped preserve her image. At the same time, she was a very cultured woman. She could speak various languages, play musical instruments, and paint. She was very popular in social circles. Elizabeth's greatest talent was acting. She could act like a completely innocent, loving woman whenever she wanted. Thanks to this talent, she went undetected for years. Her relations with the church were also very good. She regularly went to church, worshipped, and supported priests. No one thought she had made a pact with the devil. But this dual life was psychologically very exhausting for Elizabeth. Murders at night, social life during the day. This contradiction was making her increasingly unstable. In the early 1600s, Elizabeth's murders began to be noticed. Too many young girls were disappearing from villages and families' suspicions were growing. The first complaints came to local authorities, but Elizabeth was from such a powerful family that no one dared take action against her. Some brave villagers wrote letters directly to the King of Hungary. These letters detailed accusations against Elizabeth. At the same time, some of Elizabeth's former servants managed to escape. These servants told authorities what they had seen. But Elizabeth's power was so great that these testimonies weren't taken seriously. Elizabeth was aware of these complaints but didn't care. She believed her power protected her. She even became bolder and increased her murders. In 1608, she made a big mistake. She killed a noble family's daughter. This girl wasn't a poor peasant, but an educated noble girl. Her family was very powerful and wouldn't accept her disappearance. This incident became the beginning of Elizabeth's end. After the noble girl's disappearance, Hungarian King Matthias II began an official investigation. This investigation was led by György Thurzó. Thurzó was a very meticulous investigator. He wasn't afraid of Elizabeth's power because he was directly connected to the king. During the investigation, dozens of witnesses were heard, former servants who managed to escape, peasant families, Elizabeth's former partners. They all told horrific stories. The most important witness was Elizabeth's former nanny, Ilona Jew. Ilona was now old and feared death. She decided to betray Elizabeth. Ilona told all of Elizabeth's crimes in detail, the witchcraft rituals, murder methods, number of victims. She confessed everything. Thurzó also collected physical evidence. He secretly investigated Székely Castle and examined the dungeon rooms. Blood traces, torture instruments, victim lists. Everything was there. The most horrific evidence was the diary Elizabeth kept. In this diary, she had recorded all her victims' names, killing methods, quality of their blood, a total of 650 girls. There was no escape now. Elizabeth Bathory was about to be caught. On December 29, 1610, György Thurzó and his men raided Székely Castle. This operation was kept very secret because there was a possibility Elizabeth might escape. When they entered the castle, what they saw shocked them. Everywhere was covered in bloodstains. Walls, ceilings, stairs. It was like a butcher shop. In the dungeon, they found 2 girls who hadn't died yet. These girls were in extremely poor condition. They had countless burn marks and cut marks on their bodies. Even when Elizabeth was caught, she wasn't repentant. "This blood keeps me young," she said proudly. "I will live for 400 years." During the operation, Elizabeth's 4 partners were also caught. Ilona Jew, Dorothea Sentes, Janusz Ujvari, and Katarina Banica all confessed their crimes. The most horrific discovery was the book found in Elizabeth's private room. This book contained photographs of all her victims, blood quality notes, killing dates. Elizabeth had kept this book like a collection. Also, Elizabeth's witchcraft materials were found, documents of her pact with the devil, spellbooks, magical potions. At the end of the operation, remains of a total of 650 victims were found. This number made Elizabeth the most prolific known female serial killer in history. After Elizabeth's capture, a quick trial process began, but Elizabeth herself wasn't tried, because in that period, nobles couldn't be directly tried. Instead, her partners were tried. Ilona Jew, Dorothea Sentes, and Janusz Ujvari confessed their crimes. The trial process was very detailed. Separate statements were taken for each victim, murder methods, torture details, Elizabeth's role. Everything was recorded. Janusz Ujvari received the heaviest punishment. After his fingers were torn off, he was burned alive. Because as a man, his partnership in these crimes was unforgivable. Ilona Jew and Dorothea Sentes were also burned alive, but they were shown mercy by having their heads cut off first. Katarina Banica received a lighter punishment because she was only accused of deceiving girls. She received a life sentence. Elizabeth's punishment was different because killing her could cause political problems. Instead, a life imprisonment decision was made. But this wasn't ordinary imprisonment. Elizabeth would live in her own castle, but completely isolated. Elizabeth's punishment was unique. A room in Chate Castle was specially arranged for her. This room was completely walled up, leaving only a small opening for giving food. Elizabeth lived in this room for 4 years. During this process, she couldn't talk to anyone or see outside. Only food and water were given. The isolation greatly affected Elizabeth. Since she could no longer take blood baths, she began aging rapidly. Her hair turned white, her skin wrinkled, her teeth fell out. During this process, Elizabeth constantly talked to herself. She would remember her past victims, experiencing not regret but nostalgia. Elizabeth's greatest fear was dying, because she hadn't fulfilled her pact with the devil. Her bargain to live for 400 years had ended in failure. In the summer of 1614, Elizabeth's health deteriorated significantly. She was no longer eating, only drinking water. She was rapidly losing weight. On August 21, 1614, Elizabeth Bathory was found dead. She was 54 years old. Her last words are said to have been, "I was going to live for 400 years." Elizabeth's story didn't end with her death, because strange events began happening in that region. Elizabeth's body couldn't be buried in the village cemetery, because the villagers thought it was cursed. Finally, she was buried in the castle garden in an unmarked grave. After her burial, young girls began mysteriously disappearing in that region. Villagers thought Elizabeth's spirit was still wandering. Chate Castle was abandoned. No one dared to live there. At night, strange sounds were heard in the castle. Screams, chain sounds, blood-dripping sounds. Elizabeth's story was kept secret for a very long time, because the Bathory family was very powerful and didn't want this scandal to be heard. Most documents were destroyed, but the story still spread, first as whispers, then as legend. Elizabeth Bathory laid the foundation for vampire legends. In Gothic novels written in the 18th century, Elizabeth's story was a source of inspiration. Even the origins of the Dracula legend contain traces of Elizabeth. In the 20th century, Elizabeth's story came to the fore again. Historians found documented records and revealed the true story. Modern psychology sees Elizabeth Bathory as a very interesting case. She's one of the rare examples where multiple psychological disorders were seen simultaneously. First, Elizabeth had sadistic personality disorder. She took pleasure from others' pain and connected this situation with sexual satisfaction. Second, she showed narcissistic personality disorder. She was obsessively concerned with her beauty and saw herself as superior to other people. Third, she had signs of schizotypal personality disorder. Her belief in witchcraft and abnormal behaviors fell into this category. Most interesting was Elizabeth's bloodbath belief. This situation matched the folk beliefs that were common in that period. Blood was seen as the source of life energy. From a modern medical perspective, blood has no rejuvenating effect on the skin. But the placebo effect Elizabeth could show might have been very powerful. Psychologically, Elizabeth's murders actually stemmed from a need for control. To cope with her fear of aging, she was controlling other people's lives. Sociologically, Elizabeth's story reflects the power dynamics of that period. The absolute power of nobles over peasants made it easier to commit such crimes. Elizabeth Bathory's story didn't remain in the past. It formed the foundation of vampire legends in modern culture. Dracula, vampire movies, Gothic novels. Elizabeth's story is at the root of all of them. Blood drinking, pursuit of immortality, beauty obsession. These themes are very common in modern pop culture. Elizabeth's story also inspired the modern beauty industry. Anti-aging products, pursuit of youth, beauty obsession, these are modern versions of what Elizabeth was seeking. Today, there are beauty treatments called vampire facials. In these treatments, a person's own blood is applied to their face, like a scientific version of what Elizabeth did. Beauty obsession on social media, fear of aging, pursuit of perfection. These are modern versions of the problems Elizabeth experienced. Most importantly, power and control dynamics are still valid. Powerful people still exploit the weak, only the methods have changed. Elizabeth's story shows us how obsessions can turn a person into a monster. Beauty pursuit, youth obsession, immortality ambition. When these aren't controlled, they can become very dangerous. And so, what servant Anna saw that horrific night was just the result of one woman's beauty obsession. Elizabeth Bathory tried to preserve her youth with the blood of 650 innocent girls, but ultimately failed. This story teaches us several important lessons. First, how obsessions can destroy a person. Elizabeth's beauty obsession turned her into a monster. Second, how power can be abused when left uncontrolled. Elizabeth's noble status gave her the chance to commit murder for years. Third, fear of aging is a universal condition. The fear Elizabeth experienced is something today's people also experience, but the methods of coping with this fear should be very different. Fourth, how beauty standards can be harmful. Elizabeth never considered herself sufficient, constantly trying to be younger. Finally, this story shows that true beauty comes from within. Elizabeth might have been physically beautiful, but her soul had become completely ugly. Today, the anti-aging industry is worth billions of dollars. People are ready to give everything for youth. Elizabeth's story shows how far this obsession can go. If you enjoy these kinds of dark history stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can write in the comments which historical figure's story you're curious about. Let's continue learning these terrifying truths of the past together. In the next video, we'll cover the story of the king who ate his own children. Till then, let's remember the dangers of beauty obsession and not forget that true beauty lies in the soul.